Good morning. It is now 9:39 a.m., March 23rd, 2023, and I want to welcome everyone to your Senate chamber this morning. For those of you who are joining us live on local channel 23, welcome. Saludo para todos hamza. And I am Selena Babauta, Chair for the EAGI Committee. And before we proceed with today's order of business, I'd like to take care of some administrative matters. One, I appreciate if everyone, or the committee appreciates if everyone would please silence all their electronic devices at this time. And I want to inform everyone that although we are streaming live on local channel and the NMI Legislature's Facebook page, if we should go into recess, Facebook Live will continue to live stream. At this time, I want to introduce the members of the Legislative Bureau assisting us today. First, we have our legal counsel, Mr. Joe Bermudez. We have also Mr. Devin Macaranas, the legislative assistant assigned to the EAGI committee. We have our IT personnel, Mr. Delbert Camacho. And to keep order and decorum at all times in the chamber, we have our senior Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Pedro Tawai. Welcome to everyone. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Devin Macaranas to please call the roll.
Senator Selena R. Babauta,
Present.
Senator Paul A. Manglonia, Senator Donald M. Manglonia,
Present.
Senator Dennis C. Mendiola.
Present.
Madam Chair, 3 members are present, 1 member is absent.
Thank you. I'd also like to reflect for the record that Senator Paul A. Manglonia is hereby excused from this meeting today. And with 3 members establishing a quorum in the committee, this meeting is hereby called to order. For the record, the notice for today's agenda was published on March 16th, 2023, in compliance with the Open Government Act. And I would like to now recognize Senator Dennis Mendiola for the proper motion to adopt today's agenda.
Madam Chair, I move for adoption of today's agenda.
Motion has been made and has been seconded. Are there any questions or concerns on the motion? None. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. Today's agenda is hereby adopted. At this time, I would like to invite Mr. Oscar Babauta, the Special Assistant for Administration, and the nominee, Mr. Clement R. Bermudez, to join us at the table. And Mr. Babauta's role here is to introduce the nominee to the committee. Before I recognize Mr. Babauta, I would like to open the floor for public comments at this time. The floor is now open for public comments. For those of you who wish to make public comments, you may join us at the table. And I ask that you please state your name for the record and the entity you represent. Recognize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of your committee. My name is Jose C. Mafnes. I'm the Director of the Division of Customs and Biosecurity. I submitted my letter of support earlier for Colonel Bermudez. So I'm here this morning to express my strong support for the nomination of retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Clement Bermudez as the Department of Public Safety Commissioner. I believe he is an outstanding candidate for this important position, and his skills and experience make him an ideal choice for this role. With big challenges or problems facing DPS, I'm very confident uh, that Colonel Bermudez is well suited to face those challenges, and I am also confident that he can fix it. Colonel Bermudez understands the importance of building strong partnerships between law enforcement agencies and the community. You know, for so many years, the partnerships between law enforcement, DPS, and customs, and I'm even told other law enforcements, for some reason, did not exist. However, in my couple encounters with Colonel Bermudez, he expressed that he's ready to foster positive relationships between the Department of Public Safety, local and federal law enforcement agencies. I am looking forward in renewing our partnership. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Colonel Bermudez for helping my agency, the Division of Customs and Biosecurity, and having our academy accredited. He did really help us. He worked hard and really helped us achieve that goal. In closing, I'm prepared to work closely with Colonel Bermudez. May I ask this committee to endorse him to the whole Senate body and confirm him as the next Department of Public Safety Commissioner as soon as possible. Colonel Bermudez, I'm really looking forward in working with you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mrs. Mossett, Mr. Mafnes, the floor is still open.
Good morning, Hafale. Listen to my mind. Buenas, Hafale, from the island of Tinian. My name is Edwin Palacios Audan, and I am the mayor of Tinian and Nagiguan. I am writing this testimony in support of Mr. Clemente R. Bermudez to serve as the Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety, an individual with a career and experience that has the management and administrative leadership qualities needed in the Department of Public Safety. As a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, Mr. Bermudez has proven himself to be an effective leader who is able to motivate and inspire those around him to achieve their full potential. Mr. Bermudez exhibits leadership abilities well enough to plan the work of the organization, assign tasks to subordinates, and see that the work is accomplished to the highest standard. I believe that he will use these skills to lead the Department of Public Safety and ensure that it runs effectively and efficiently. Furthermore, his professional experience in dealing with public safety will allow him to bring a unique perspective to the role of commissioner. He will have first-hand knowledge of the challenges and issues that law enforcement officers face and will be able to work with them to develop solutions that will benefit both the department and the people it serves. Mr. Bermudez used to chair NMC's Criminal Justice Department that facilitates the criminal justice program that prepares students for career employment in criminal justice agencies, including police, courts, corrections, and emerging alternative programs. The program trains citizens and current and future criminal justice professionals to have excellent and oral and written communication skills, cognitive and analytical skills, and emphasize both on theoretical and practical approach to the major field of criminal justice. Mr. Bermudez was recently promoted to the Dean of the Northern Marianas College Academic Program and Services. He conducted numerous agendas and programs that nurture and facilitate growth and development, including the upholding high standard for the faculty, staff, students, and create a positive work and learning environment within the college or school. With that said, I believe that Mr. Bermudez is an excellent candidate for the role of Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. His leadership abilities and extensive professional experience will be a significant asset to both the department and the people it serves. Closing, I would like to thank you again for giving me the opportunities to state my full support for Mr. Clemente R. Bermudez to serve as the Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. Thank you, and Suzus Masi.
Jesus Masi, Mayor Aldon. The floor is still open.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senate Body. Alfredes and Turo, good morning. My name is Anthony Torres, Acting Commissioner, Department of Corrections. I'm here this morning to provide my full support for Clement R. Bermudez as the new Commissioner for the Northern Mariana Islands Department of Public Safety. I have met with Clement on several occasions, and in the short time that I have known him, I can honestly say, in my humble opinion, that he projects a leadership the men and women of the department will admire and follow. He possesses the emotional intelligence that will inspire other police officers and DPS personnel to stay the course and lead by example. He is a humble person and easily articulates policies, procedures, and ethics to his staff. He demonstrates the honesty, the open-mindedness, the gratitude, the caring, the responsibility, the objectivity, the willingness, and the humility. Our visions align, and I strongly believe that Clement is what DPS needs. And in working together, by teaming up and collaborating, we can make our CNMI a better place for all of us. I'm confident that Clement Bermudez is the right commissioner for DPS. I ask for your committees to support and expediting the confirmation of Mr. Bermudez as the next commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. Members of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands Senate, I look forward to working with Mr. Bermudez, and I know he will do his very best to demonstrate that he is worthy of your support. Thank you.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Torres. The floor is still open.
Morning, Madam Chair, honorable members of this committee. My name is Claudio Cotomo Norita. I'm here as a concerned citizen. I did submit my letter of support for Mr. Bermudez earlier. Just to summarize, Clement is like Don Torres. Before I came up, our local boys, came out of the island, left the island, found careers above beyond and made a life for themselves, but have come home. And, it's a good thing for the cinema when we see our people come back home and serve the community that they left years ago. Clement is not new to DPS. He was a graduate from the Cinema Police Academy. Yeah, went on to college, Army, as everybody's mentioned. Came back to the NMC, and even that NMC, gave him an opportunity to be part of NMC's leadership, the opportunity to serve the CNMI as the commissioner of DPS was something that also a benefit for the CNMI. We never expected Clement to be coming back home, but for him to take the challenge up to be commissioner of DPS is a blessing for all of us in the CNMI. DPS, most of us probably here also has gone through turmoils and whatnot, and for us to talk about it, there's no need for it. The leadership is here now. He's right in front of you. You can ask him all the questions you're going to ask, and he will give you an appropriate response to your questions. He has leadership, and something that DPS might be lacking, but at the end of the day, he's going to provide that leadership for his people, the Department of Public Safety, the police officers, and the men and women, the civilian personnel of DPS. He's going to provide that leadership, that example of how to lead, when to lead, and where they will follow him. And that's one thing I know of Clement for years, and he is going to be able to provide that leadership that DPS needs. Back to basic for Clement, training, as somebody had mentioned earlier, it's training. You build your infrastructure, your personnel, your resources on training. And he's got that in his blood. He understands that. He's in communication with regional police departments and agencies to come and help train our people, build up the standard, build up their professional level, and that's important. And the trust. If there's a saying that if you start looking good, you're going to start feeling good, and you're going to start doing good. I think he's going to provide that overall concept to DPS, the police officers, and in turn, those officers are going to reflect to our community, and he's going to start to rebuild the trust that we all probably know could be lacking in DPS. And he's got that leadership to do it. Nobody else right now that's available to do it for us, and it's a blessing for us, for the CNMI to be able to have Clement provide the leadership for DPS. So, Madam Chair, again, as in my letter of support, I ask for your most urgent confirmation and approval of Clement. DPS is in abeyance right now and trying to move forward, but they need that leader. Thank you.
Cesar Smossick, Mr. Norita, the floor is still open.
Hafadays and Tiro, honorable members, Madam Chairwoman, and members of the Senate. My name is Eileen Alipuzo Babauta. For those of our people who are visually impaired, I have light-colored skin with long black hair tied in a ponytail. I'm wearing a light blue mix button-up shirt with floral designs and blue shorts. Honorable members, thank you for giving us the opportunity to stand here today to provide our strong support for retired Lieutenant Colonel Clement Regis Bermudez. Clem is a classmate, a longtime friend. Clem and I went to college at the University of Guam in 1996. It was where we led the first student organization. This organization worked towards holistically embracing all our Sinamay residents, leaving our home to go to a 4-year institution. Our purpose was to take care of our people. It is here where I had the opportunity to work alongside Clem, where he shared his island spirit, so humble, selfless, and loyal. I can go all day, but my purpose here is to share just why does Clem deserve to be the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. Clement is humble, selfless, and loyal again, always there to assist, support, guide, and lead all those he comes in contact with. He has a heart that seeks to protect and inspire. When he sets his heart on any task, he dedicates and commits himself to success. One of the most important conversations we had on why Clem should be the commissioner is that he was once in their shoes. He knows where they've been. He knows what they need. He also knows the road will be a challenge. However, his professionalism, his expertise, his heart is for the general good of our CNMI community. I remember in a brief conversation that we had quite a while ago, he was contemplating and deeply displaced, having just been the Northern Runners College's Dean of Academic Programs, and for just about 6 months. It was a time of deep contemplation as he works towards deciding on what to do. As he said, it's a tough decision. I would only conclude, in my opinion, that it was his experience and the expertise he gained during his time in the military that supported his decision to take the opportunity to be the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. I stand today to share with you that as you confirm Clem today, the CNMI gains an asset, a committed, dedicated, and loyal man for our CNMI. We are fortunate to have a CNMI son return home to protect his islands. On behalf of my family, I ask, give my brother, Lieutenant Colonel Bermudez, an opportunity to serve our people and protect our Sinamay. Thank you, and Sisusmasi.
Mrs. Mossett, Ms. Babalta. The floor is still open.
Buenos dias, Honorable Chair, dyan ni Committee Anestina members. Inaonno si Juan Taiscan de la Cruz, guaho i Ports Police Chief para i Commonwealth Ports Authority. Gaigizo gini na ogan kumutaalok tay gwini usupapota si Mr. Clement R. Bermudez para i Commissioner ng DPS. Esta bunti paugo na ogan tahungo ka todo imantistitigo. Gwini po hafa no izo niya qualification si Mr. Bermudez. Za ilek ko tay gwini hunggan man nananggait kumu uno na sunidonon Marianas para tapega si Mr. Bermudez guato gi pweston i taolo ki Commissioner ni DPS. Pud rason manhong gizuloki na i qualification izo niya qualification kumu uno na leader gaigi yes Mr. Bermudez. Manalyam na si Mr. Bermudez gi taoluk kadada na tempo. Low jangin kumentos guaha no fundamenton niya. Guaha taoluk tinatitiji kumu taoluk gaijo no a true leadership for the Commonwealth. Especialmente jangin taoluk para guato gi departamento ni Pulusia kumugiza para i next na commissioner. O fa-faisi namdo sa board ang suportasyon para paugunogan. Kumusinya mon tanalatsadig este na process jata no si Mr. Bermudez kumugwiza para i next na no DPS commissioner sa manananga i officialis parewa tori otro na first responders, and I'm here to support that. In fact, ileleko na bay suporta i ofaloki ginagagawa niya i commissioner janging guaha asistimento ang nasisita i Departamento ni Pulisya gi Commonwealth Ports Authority. Si Jesus Masi, and good morning.
Mrs. Mossett, Mr. De La Cruz. The floor is still open.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Juan Pua from the Department of Public Safety. I hope I'll be the last person to testify for Mr. Bermudez, so you guys can confirm him. Anyway, I know Mr. Bermudez. We grew up together in a DPS, but then he left abroad. I have no doubt, and I'm confident that Mr. Bermudez can lead and manage DPS. So please, like the other said, I am here in full support for his confirmation for Mr. Bermudez. Thank you and good day.
Mrs. Mossett, Mr. Pua. Unfortunately, we can't confirm him until we get through the procedures this morning. The floor is still open. Are there any more? If not, we will proceed. May I please recognize the LA, Mr. Macaranas, to administer the oath to Mr. Clement Bermudez. After. Sorry, first we will have Mr. Oscar Babata introduce the nominee. I was just trying to take the recommendation of Mr. Pua and rush it, but Mr. Babata, we will
So
give you the
exciting this
opportunity.
morning, Madam Chair and members. Jesus Masi, Madam Chair, thank you very much, and good morning, Lesor Mawai, Afaday Tirod, and Buenos Dias, Loki, Chairman Babauta, and the honorable members of your esteemed EAGI committee. For the record, my name is Oscar M. Babauta, Special Assistant for the Administration for the Office of the Governor, on behalf of Governor Honorary Palacios and that of the Lieutenant Governor David Mundu Apatang. I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. This morning, I'm here to introduce the Governor's nominee for the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, retired Lieutenant Colonel of the United States Army, Mr. Clement R. Bermudez. Let me just say I need to cut to the chase, and somehow I believe the earlier speakers, I concluded my introduction as somehow they probably attacked my computer last night. The contexts are exactly the same as what I'm about to say. So this morning, Madam Chair, I wish to skip that. And we're laughing with our administration's nominee earlier. I said, man, I love this morning's testimonies of your supporters. It seems like a eulogy. So, Madam Chair, Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apatang places their full trust and confidence in Mr. Bermudez's character to serve as Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. I know he stands very well ready to answer your questions and present his plans for the future. Most of us have heard the past few weeks through public media. I do not wish to dwell on that. However, I would leave those inquiry to the honorable members to do just that. His long history of professional experiences, credentials, and commitment to serving the Commonwealth in this capacity makes him a viable candidate. And we kindly ask for your expeditious approval from your committee and that of the full Senate in the next few days, if not maybe in a week's time, so that a sustainable operations of the department can move forward. Madam Chair, as I said earlier, I got several paragraphs that I can dwell for maybe 30 minutes, but since most of them have already echoed, they kind of shared a paragraph of mine. Each of them has a paragraph of mine. Thank you, Jesus Masi, Giliso, and for the opportunity to be with you again this morning, and especially our nominee, demonstrations nominee, Mr. Bermudez, to introduce this morning to this August body. Jesus Masi again, thank you very much, and I leave Mr. Bermudez alone into your hands. Good morning, and buenos dias, my
Jesus
honorable
Masi.
senators.
Jesus Masi, Mr.
We'll see you this
Babata.
afternoon at 2 p.m.
I also want to state for the record that we also received written letters of support from Mr. Jose P. Sares, Mr. Aniceto Ogumuro, Mr. Jeff Olopai, Mr. Claudio Narita, and Mr. Delbert Pua, all in support of the nominee's nomination. At this time, I will ask Mr. Bermudez to please rise while the legislative assistant will administer your oath.
Mr. Clement R. Bermudez, you do solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you shall give in the matter at hand shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you. Today we will examine two nominations this morning. As you hear, Mr. Clement Bermudez nominated to the position of Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety, and this afternoon We will be examining the nomination of Ms. Tracy Norita at 2 p.m., nominated for the position of Secretary of Finance. Today is a heavy day for this committee, as these are the two most critical departments that we will be examining today. I also want to let everyone know why you are here today witnessing the vetting of these nominations. It is the responsibility of this committee under the law and the legislature to exercise its authority to examine the credentials beyond professional or personal standing. And that is why we are here today, and that is why what you will be witnessing today. Each member of this committee has a responsibility to ask probing questions of the nominee in order to determine their character under pressure, their educational credentials, and professional credentials as well. And so at this time, I will open up the floor to the nominee if you wish to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hafade, good morning, Tiro. First, I would like to recognize, because without the people behind me, I will not be sitting in front of this committee this morning. First, to my wife of over 30 years, Zara Pangilina Bermudez. So she's borne every issue, concern I've had, and we actually grew up together. And we're been blessed with 3 children. Franny, who's currently serving in the United States Army, our son CJ in college, and our baby here at home. She's still a baby, although she's graduating in a few days. To our mom, Frances, our brothers, and our sisters. To our families that are here in the Sinamai, those present today, those that are in Guam, and those that are really across the world. To the men and women of the Department of Public Safety, those in our fellow and sister law enforcement agencies, some of whom you have heard this morning. To our fellow veterans, my classmates from high school who are also present here, my sisters and brothers in the military, standing guard at this moment in time for our freedom's freedoms at Freedom's Frontier. To my former NMC pros that are also present today. To our, again, to, and including, when I say brothers and sisters in blue, that includes our federal partners. And the men and women of the department will actually and voluntarily dedicate their time and lives to serving the Commonwealth as part of the Department of Public Safety. And finally, to my parents, who both taught and demonstrated to me at an early age, and to my siblings, what right is, that wrong is never right, and drilled the values of hard work, integrity, and education that's beyond high school, and that to serve the people is the most honorable role that you can do in society. Fellow, senators, I am truly honored to appear before you because of the persistence and belief of Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor Apatang that I can help them rebuild the trust in the Commonwealth. I will do my best to answer your questions based on my tenure with the department in the past 2.5 weeks as their acting commissioner. I am further honored to return to the department where I started my public service over 30 years ago. It is also reassuring to see familiar faces in the department as I go on my listening tour, and that they're still there. And there's a true reason why they are still there. So it's either I introduce myself as a new person or reintroduce myself back into the family. I am further encouraged by the younger generation of officers and civilians who are part of the journey to rebuild our department. As we are all too familiar, it takes a village to raise a child and an entire community to recover from typhoons. Therefore, the department cannot and will not do it alone. We need the support and partnerships of both local and federal agencies. We have a unifying goal to enforce the laws and regulations of our Commonwealth. And I have pledged my full cooperation and that of the department to our sister law enforcement agencies. In closing, let's start. START is an acronym for service, trust, accountability, respect, and transparency. Our people deserve better, and this is what I commit to our people from this day forward. I am now ready to answer your questions.
Cesar Mosse, Mr. Bermudez, and welcome to your family who is here today. We will begin the question and answer portion right now, and I will recognize the members of this committee to ask their probing questions. Recognize Senator Dennis Mendiola.
Mr. Bermudez, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Good morning. Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to kind of when we talk about this guy's credential, I don't think we do him justice by not mentioning some of his accolades. So I'd like to just mention a few, if you don't mind. I see that you graduated Police Academy, valedictorian. I see that you graduated magna cum laude with Associates of Art. To go down into some of your awards and military credentials, you got roughly about 20 commendations on awards. I'm looking at some of your career in the past, and I'm looking at you went to National Training Center, Logistics University, Joint Chief of Staff, the Pentagon. You were at NMC, and I had the pleasure to work with you too when I was the commissioner. And I know that you were very adamant about training and making sure that everybody receives, the best of the best. And through that, I'd like to just ask that, is that your vision for the Department of Public Safety? Are you going to bring that into the department and continue to push for that higher standard? As you mentioned in your speech, and as a lot of these testimonials were said today, they have the full and utmost trust in you. So I ask if this is really the avenue that you're going to take.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola, for that question. Like with anything that we do, we got to train, right? As part of preparation. As a fellow veteran, we're familiar with training because we cannot train enough. And going back to basics, as one of the testimonials this morning, we do have to do that. Training apparently has become a one-time, one-and-done deal at the department. The academy is not the first and the last training event. Training must be continuous. We do in-service training, and we do specialized training. And just like with the physical conditions of our Commonwealth, we cannot do it locally. We need federal partners. I am here to pledge that we will leverage the capabilities and abilities of our federal partners because we cannot never do it alone. And we do have to return to training and continuously train our officers because that's how they level up their skills. That's how they ensure that they're up to date with what is happening. Police changes every moment of the day, and we have to stay up to date. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I agree completely that we can't do it alone, and especially given our financial crisis, we're going to need every assistance from all our federal partners. So I agree with your testimony. There's a common saying when administration changes, the power shifts from one group to another. And I think, or I know that there's a lot of concerns about that. And I asked that, is this the vision, or is this a part of your vision in terms of rebuilding trust?
The power you mentioned about the power shifts, right? It's a collective concern, and really, when it comes to the Department of Public Safety and the trust that we actually, right, we wear that trust on our chest every day, and that's through that badge. There's a code of ethics and a code of conduct, and when we're talking about shifting power, shifting groups now, it's the next group. Very well, that's one of my vision is, and I'm acting on it. Politics stops at me. Okay, politics has no business in the Department of Public Safety or by any means any organizations. It just disintegrates and it demoralizes the people that are actually there to serve. So when we're talking about power shift, there is no such thing. The power is on the department. The power is vested in each member that are actually upholding and following the laws.
Outstanding. I agree again. And I'm just making sure that, the constituents, the men and women in blue hear this, so that we try and continue to raise the morale in the department. I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to penalize anybody in the past. That is not my purpose here. But again, to just hold the current or the future commissioner accountable to his statements, given that you are under oath. So, Madam Chair, I yield for now.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. Recognize Senator Donald Manglone.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everyone present here on this occasion. Before I begin, I just want to thank you, Acting Commissioner, for your service to our country, as well as your service to the CNMI and wanting to come back and give back. There's no doubt that your work experiences in the past has prepared you for this moment. But just so that we do that due diligence, there are certain things that I wanted to bring up, and just to get your overall opinion, so that the people can see your vision as well and understand it. I know we've read in the news recently that there have been 28 individuals that were placed on leave pending some investigations. Is the department adequately staffed right now with those 28 personnel being placed on leave?
Thank you, Senator Manglone. Placing somebody away from the front lines is one too many. And I see your concern, and it is a major concern of mine as well. 28 is a lot. But I cannot go in details because of the pending ongoing criminal investigation. But does it affect the department? Definitely it does, right? But we have shifted resources because my priority is the front line, right? Because that's where they interact, that's where they engage, that's where they address the issues and concerns of our community, the people that we serve. So we have shifted resources within the department to go and support the front line. Most of us are aware the front line is a patrol and traffic. That's where the uniformed services, that's where the resources, and that's where the preponderance of the men and women in blue are posted as we speak.
Are all these 28 personnel police officers?
Yes, sir.
And with the 28 personnel gone, with the current staffing that you have, are you incurring any overtime with the 28 being gone?
No. And you're wondering how so? We currently have 4 shifts, right? Previously, it's only a 12-hour shift, so we have 8-hour shifts now. Okay, which is we are incurring minimal overtime. as compared to historical overtime data that you already have. So it's minimal and it's controlled, and that is one of the that is one of the major corrective action that the department is and has been recently taking, and will continue to do that, because that's a cost that for many years, way back when I was a police officer in the 90s, right? It's a cost that's never budgeted for,
Right.
right? And we have to take control of that, because those are resources, and once we manage that, we can be able to anticipate and project where we need really to align the resources.
Well, and the reason I asked is trying to understand whether there's even a need for additional officers, or even at the current staffing with the 28 gone, is that sustainable for the moving forward? Or is there a need to even increase, even if you were to bring those 28 back? Is there a need for more officers, etc.?
There is, and as I continue reviewing and analyzing really the capabilities of this department and where our focus must be, that is why I brought up about that the department cannot do it alone. We are partnering with our fellow law enforcement agencies, both local and federal. So because there's areas that we must leverage the federal. There's areas that we must leverage our sister law enforcement agencies, right? So that really, I mean, the output is forthcoming, because that's where we can actually leverage law enforcement. A law enforcement officer is a law enforcement officer in the Commonwealth. They have they have the same responsibilities as a police officer. So as we build these partnerships, right, we can actually close the gap in the Commonwealth. And closing the gap will require that it's aligned with our priorities for the Commonwealth. And as I mentioned earlier, my first priority and my top priority is the front line, the people in blue that are out front.
Thank you. And again, these line of questionings leads me into my recommendation that, again, with the 28 gone, I hope that you can utilize this time to kind of assess if there is a need for additional officers or if not, because that 28 personnel equates to 28 salaries that, if it turns out that they need to be terminated, for example, then we don't necessarily have to fill those positions, but rather take that salary and spread it through the remaining officers. And that's one of the recommendations that was brought up with the OPM review, is that we need to look at how can we increase salaries of our police officers. The next thing I wanted to bring up is, in part of that review from OPM, the internal affairs is going off of a manual, an employee misconduct policy and procedures manual that's been adopted since 96. And I think that it's about time we kind of revise that and try to make it current, as well as I'm trying to see how this affects the department. And then again, going back to the review, it recommends trying to mirror the policy that corrections has implemented. Can I ask about the counselors? How many counselors do you have on board right now?
Unofficially, every first line supervisor is a counselor. We're talking about professional counselors, we have none.
So where do they get counseling services? Where do officers get counseling services?
So clearly, right, the CGC, the Commonwealth Guidance Center, Community Guidance Center, is right. That is their mission for the Commonwealth, and that's the first line of counseling, for professional counseling rather. And that's where Senator Manglone, when we're talking about leveraging the capabilities across the department, right? The Commonwealth government, everybody thinks it's huge, right? Some say it's bloated. And that's where we got to relook, right? We got to look inside and see where we can leverage the expertise. Just because, right? The CGC, the Commonwealth under CACC, has the expertise. Why should I have a redundant capability in my department when actually there's an agency that we go to, right? Why should I create a fish and wildlife capability when DLNR has that capability? You know, I mean, this is writ large. I mean, we have to, right, start looking at ourselves and streamline our operation, because if we're talking about counseling, CGC is my counselor, right? If we're talking about, you know, enforcing traffic laws, that's the Department of Public Safety. I don't see any other department in the Commonwealth that should be doing it. So that's part of actually us looking in and looking at across the board. And I think it's prime time that we do that as a Commonwealth. What I do is not just for the department. What I do is how the department fits in the bigger scheme of things for the Commonwealth government that improves and enhances the services we provide to our people. That's what matters. And I know it's kind of a long answer, but that is how, and I want you to understand, that's how I approach capabilities, right? Because if there's zero, that should not mean that now commissioner must hire 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? The capabilities exist. Okay. Similarly, why should I have a legal counsel when the Attorney General's office is there for the government?
Thank you. And so, what is your opinion? And I bring this up because you know I've been reading on some of the requirements in regards to psych eval, as well as you know, rookies being placed in these high stress environment and not knowing where to get that support. Um, you know, and also just having to go on their own to CGC versus having one member on staff to that they can easily walk to, even during the job, or you know, maybe um, they might be very prideful in going to you trying to get to a counselor, and so not having that access, you know, is something that I hope that you know, you can consider um, whether they go through the department or go through CGC. I'm not sure what the situation with CGC is, if they have enough counselors available to address DPS as well as all other areas of the government. But I understand what you're saying, and that you know, just ensuring that there's that access to mental health experts. Um, have you had the opportunity, or in the near future, will you be visiting Rhoda and Tinian, and how has your relationship been with the resident directors on those islands?
You know, it's great to be home, and that involves our departments also, right, in Rhoda and Tinian. I say that because RD Rhoda, Ed is I've worked with him previously in the 90s, so it's a reunion that's pending. I am scheduled to see them next week. I will be there, spend a day with them. Okay, right? Because I like to do face to face versus anything virtual or over the phone. You can see the emotions and whatever drive that they have, right, in person. Likewise, for the RD on Tina and Villa Gomez, I mean, he's been around, right, and it's really good and refreshing, even to include the mayor of Tinian, whom was a former police officer. We've served back in the 90s too. So it's a semi reunion of officers, and it's good for them to return. For instance, the RD on Rhoda, so that we can strengthen that bond. That Rhoda and Tinian is no different from Saipan, right? And that the resources we share, and that we allow and embrace and actually afford the same opportunities for the officers that are on Rhoda and Tinian. So it's right. That's one Commonwealth. Okay, one Commonwealth is not Saipan, and we have to share and extend that, because we're just one whole family. And I pledge to you that that relationship is, and I will foster that relationship, because there's no other way around it, and we have to do that, because again, one department, and we're supporting one Commonwealth.
Thank you. The next question I have is your opinion on a drug and alcohol workplace, and what is your opinion on how should the department handle situations where officers are tested positive for drugs, and so I'm currently in discussions with OPM and trying to see how we can change the regulations or even place it in statute to whether this should be a zero tolerance policy or is it something that should be stricter. And so I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on that.
You know, so clearly, I mean, we have policies and the laws that governs that for the department when it comes to drugs and alcohol, right? I have a zero tolerance policy. I see that we should not, right? The people should not have somebody in uniform wearing that badge and gun that's under the influence, right? They it's like having a drunk or drugged pilot and we're all sitting back there, right? And it just doesn't work, and the department is not the place for that. Okay, potentially there may be other places, right? That's less strict than that of the department, but again, we can't afford to have anybody drunk or drugged that are working, and if they need help, then we shall, right, give them the access to the help that they will need. But we just can't have that, Mr. Senator.
Okay, so that's something. So a zero tolerance policy is something that you would support.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just one last question, and then I'll go into some recommendations. What is your thoughts on just the physical fitness portion of the officers? Is it an issue? If it is, are there any plans to address it? If not, are there any programs that gives the officers the opportunity to, maintain their fitness, whether it be mental or physical, all of that?
Thank you. Physical fitness is just a component of the entire human system, and I'm glad you mentioned about mental health. Right, we gotta be right. We gotta be able to speak and talk about mental health, right? Because it affects everyone, and that's just another component. So my position on physical fitness is similar to, right, and we just cannot implement what the military does, but we're paramilitary, right? Physical fitness is key. I mean, uh, there's no, and we got to work on it, right? Uh, and first, it starts with the individual. It's an individual responsibility as well. Okay, with the shift from 12 hours, right, from 12-hour shifts to 8-hour shifts, that would allow the individual officer to take it on themselves and go walk, run, or bike, right? I mean, there's a lot of places to see in the Commonwealth, and those are opportunities. Again, that's a time back to them, and time has always been a factor. When do I have the time? So now we're giving them that time. The next layer will be, what can we do to ensure that there's compliance when it comes to physical fitness and fitness in general. And and I'm looking at other jurisdictions where there's an annual requirement, right? Right, both medical, right, because of mental health, and as well as the physical fitness, actually testing. uh, and I would love to work with you so we can implement something similar to our jurisdiction, right? So that, granted, there's times there are medical conditions, right, underlying, and we have to understand that as well. So we have to take that into full account. I will not make any decision on my own. Definitely, it requires the senior leadership of the department to develop and promulgate a plan on how we're going to address physical holistic health for the department. Okay, and we need to do that, right? uh, just in the past year, right, I mean, not, tied to physical fitness, but health. We see, right? It's almost weekly that we see funerals in the Commonwealth. Okay, I'm not saying it's all physical fitness issues, but right, health. We're starting investing in the health of our personnel.
Thank you. Yeah, and I bring that up because we see during the academies, whether it's police or defense, they work hard at both their physical, mental well-being, and after that, it's like are there any continuous improvements or maintenance since graduating from academy? And I know Rhoda has implemented, and even during Senator Mendiola's time as commissioner on Rhoda, and I think even here in Saipan, they set aside a day to just have some kind of physical activity, just to whether it be for physical fitness or mental wellness. And so that's something that and I know this was also brought up way back when, where I think it was also in Guam, where they were doing physical fitness tests, and giving officers time to rectify that, or get in shape or do some kind of activity. And so thank you for your candid responses. Just some things that I wanted to bring up that was part of the recommendation from the review. And I know I think this was shared with you, and if not, I could provide you a copy, or it can be accessed with OPM. Some of the recommendations based on the review done by OPM include ensuring that prospective officers passing medical clearance prior to academy take a written exam at the end of academy, pass a psychological exam prior to graduation from academy, increasing pay levels, changing the minimum requirement for police academy to include officers who have gotten a degree to also go through academy, institute a body system where a high-ranking officer is paired with a rookie, provide continuous training on investigative techniques, money laundering, report writing, tactical and rapid response, protective gear. I know that's something that department lacks, and I hope to see that request in your budget proposal. Bringing back premium pay and hazardous pay. And to review the internal affairs policy. And I hope that you can also include, and I know that we tried to fund a desk audit in the 21st, but because it wasn't enough to do a complete audit, they called it a review. And so I hope that you can try to find an auditing firm that can do a full desk audit. And if you can include that in your request in the budget proposal, should you get confirmed, so that we can really look at areas that we can really improve on in terms of salary for our law enforcement officers. And I know that's something that has always been brought up, and it's something that we hope to do, is to increase the salaries of these officers. And so again, and that's why I brought in the very first question of, with the 28 officers gone, is it sustainable? And so I hope that you can revisit and review the personnel you have on board, try to make it more efficient, but then also trying to think about, if we do want to get our officers, if we do want to increase their pay, then we also have to realize how many we have on board, and will it be, do we have enough to try to take care of the ones that are currently on board, as opposed to before we move further and trying to bring in more officers. So again, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for stepping up to the plate and trying to boost morale within this department, and trying to restore trust within this agency. At this time, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Senator Manglonia. I have my own questions. I was listening to the other members and want to have follow-up questions. First of all, I don't know what it is with you Army people. You retired from the Army, same here as Senator Mendiola, and yet you returned to active service, including my husband. I've been nagging him not to take the job. I don't know what it is. I can't. That's the part they didn't teach me in Army wife school. But I heard you talk about training, and I agree. In the 22nd legislature, as a House member, I authored legislation to raise the salaries of first responders, provided they meet certain requirements, certifications, domestic violence certifications, or riots, things like that we don't have here. So I hope you look into those types of certifications and accreditations for your officers. And I would gladly support introducing that legislation again. And they say in the Army, train as you fight, fight as you train. So I'm glad you're taking training for the officers to a level that they need to perform their duties efficiently and safely. But I do have hard questions. First of all, we're in the 21st century. What are your plans to get DPS accredited, whether it's Kalea, whether it's the other organizations? We need to get up to speed to the police force in the region or law enforcement around our region so that we can share resources. And that's one of the ways that can increase the funding for our local police force.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This follow-up question is very important because now and I'll introduce to you as we work towards we need to have right, we have one vision is one, right? The next thing is we'll be sharing with you in the coming days because we need to have a strategy. So this strategy will be what DPS 2030 looks like. Okay, 2030 is not too far from us, but we need to build up to that point, right? We're in the 21st century, like you mentioned, and we need 21st century policing. So this strategy really will be tied to what Senator Manglon is talking about in the budget, so that there's different components, right? Be it wellness, right? The holistic health, right? The training, and the certification and accreditation of this department, so we can build to it. We wish we can just apply online and get an accreditation, but we know it requires time, right? Requires typically facilities, the training, and also the sustainable budget for a department, because right, funding is always most of the time a component of any accreditation. So this DPS 2030 will lay that groundwork so that we can have something that we work for, and that if I come back and see you and about any budget or anything, this strategy will be tight and aligned with the budget, right? Because if I'm asking you for 50 more officers, I gotta justify to you why I need 50 more officers, right? So this fiscal year, you may only be able to give me 10, right? Then we gotta adjust adjust our plans so that we can ensure that we're still working towards that end goal. And absent that, we're shooting in the dark. Okay, we do not know what it is. We just go in the room without night vision, and we're just shooting at anything that we think is the target. And that has to stop. We have to have a strategy, and that strategy is tied to our budget. And and you and I are on the same boat when it comes to accreditation, because it's more than just the Commonwealth. When we get accredited, just like in education, it's recognized at other places, so that our officers that serve 20 years here can go to Arizona PD, right, or some other police department and be at the same level as other other jurisdictions. So we need to up our game. In order to up the game, we have to prepare our officers, train our officers, and evolve and innovate this department. And that is what we will do, is innovate, and because our people deserves better than what it is.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with the legislature looks forward to that because we need to start, well, if confirmed, you have 4 years to lay the road work, the map to that accreditation. So I hope we can do it. I don't know how long it takes to get accredited, but I hope we can work with you on that roadmap to accreditation. And you mentioned budget. It's everything is tied to money in the department. Last year, have you read the transition report for DPS?
Yes, ma'am.
In that transition report, it says DPS requested approval to pay out 11,127.25 hours of overtime. This is in the last pay period of the year alone, December of 2022, a mere 3 months ago. That is about a year and a half's work of regular hours of OT for 174 hours out of 192. Additionally, about 40 officers, both high ranking and low ranking, alone accrued an estimated total of 4,000 hours of overtime, about 5.5 months of regular work hours in overtime. Within the same group of officers, every pay period, there appears to be overtime of 50 to 145 hours for the same individuals at DPS. First responders that are lower ranking officers were only allowed 30 to 40 hours of overtime, maximum. And while high ranking officers were allowed to accrue past the 40 hours. So I'm glad you mentioned the budget because this is a serious concern for the legislature. We are asked to amend the current fiscal year and we don't know who else to cut so we can fund operations when it was zeroed out last year. So I hope and I hear your plans to curtail this and to control it. And I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Since coming on board at DPS in the last 2 weeks, what has been your biggest challenge?
So, truly, the biggest challenge has been right sizing the department, right? Where do we again focus? So I'm not saying we're not focusing on anything, but where do we prioritize our effort and our resources, right? Because as you know, if everything's a priority, none is a priority, nothing at all. So we got to prioritize. And as I mentioned earlier, and I share with this committee, is my priority is the front line. So we got to make sure that we prioritize, right, the front line, okay? And that is the patrol and traffic of the department. And put the resources there, okay? Because if we can prevent crime, right, there'll be lesser investigations. So the tail will be shortened, or there won't be any tail at all to any crime because it's addressed upfront. So and we're managing, and once we right size the department, determine really reassess where we at and where we headed to, because I agree with you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we can't afford what happened as noted in the transition report. This government can't afford less the department. We can't afford going forward that way. What really concerns me with that amount of overtime is the officer's wellness. If that truly happened, right, how well is the officer? Okay, which is tied to what Mr. Manglonia pointed out. How well are we taking care of our officers? So that is an investment in itself, right? Because the officer is an individual system that we need to be working fully functional and well maintained. So again, the focus is got to be the individual officer and how well do we treat them, well do we care for them, and that's really what characterized that, Madam Chair, that finding from the transition report. You know, I mean, yes, the numbers and the dollars there, but if it truly happened, okay, I'm concerned of their fitness now, right? Because I mean, that's even a machine cannot continuously work, right? You need to rest that machine, right? So, and that is a also another focus under this department is investing in training, but it goes back to the individual officer.
Thank you. Here's something I'd like you to take a look at. I looked at the numbers for our neighboring island of Guam. They have a population of 170,534. And the number of police officers, uniformed officers, is 267. Saipan's population is roughly 43,400. And we have 194 uniformed officers. So I'd like for you to take a look at those numbers and see. We asked OPM to do a desk audit. Unfortunately, many of the officers were still assigned to COVID duties and could not get an accurate picture. What we tried to find out from that desk audit is that does DPS have enough of officers, in the right positions and the right jobs, or is there too many police officers? So I give you those statistics because it's very staggering that for a population of 43,000, we have nearly 200 officers. And our neighbor island whose population is roughly 4 times more is about equal, if you would, in terms of ratios. So that's very concerning to me. How is your relationship? And I know you mentioned Rhoda, that you'll be going there next week. I'm concerned about Rhoda and Tinian. Oftentimes we hear in the budget hearing process that while there is support, minimal support, it is insufficient, to say the least. So, and I know at one time, Rhoda had their own police academy, which I find unacceptable because the standards have to be the same. So I'd like to hear your plans. Well, maybe until you meet with Rhoda, resident department head, find out what is the liability of those who went through that academy without any accreditation, certified accreditation. What is the liability to the Department of Public Safety? Because that is very concerning, and that's a huge liability for the government. How is your relationship with federal partners now? Have you started to?
I have, ma'am. It's I've met almost every federal agency that's located and stationed here in the Commonwealth. And again, just like I pledged to the fellow state and local agencies, they have the full cooperation of the department. I've got nothing to hide. I'm fully transparent, and that is a similar pledge from them. And it's got to be, it's a mutual relationship, and I look forward to meeting the rest of them. And we're scheduled to complete that on or about next week.
Thank you, because I think it's very critical that we work with federal agencies. There's certain things that certainly fall out of your jurisdiction as a local police officer. You mentioned earlier about leveraging services that other government agencies provide, such as CGC. It may look simple, but oftentimes you will come across like CGC may be backlogged, or they may have other issues. So what are I hope you look into contingency plans to accommodate counseling and other services that government provides. But I agree that we shouldn't be redundant. That is what keeps bloating this government, I think. Without exposing your ongoing investigation, what is the conduct, who is conducting the investigation of the 28 officers?
That is our internal affairs in coordination with the Office of the Attorney General.
And again, without jeopardizing any investigation, what is the nature of the allegations against the 28?
It ranges, but majority, ma'am, are tied to overtime and
Okay.
potential fraud with that overtime.
And when might the public receive an update?
Once we complete the investigation and the next steps as a result of that investigation, whether it's a exoneration or prosecution.
Okay, and throughout the past several years, there have been allegations of corruptions and against police officers and hostile working environments in DPS. Are you finding this to be true?
You know, ma'am, that's I don't see it. If they're putting up a show because I'm around, I don't get that. I don't get that feeling. There's a feeling of a refresh, if you will, as I do my listening tour across the department. And if there's any hostile work environment, that is my responsibility to resolve and to ensure that that does not exist, because that's unnecessary energy that we're devoting for something when somebody is a culprit.
Sometimes we feel like it's our responsibility too because they call us and report to us. So just giving you that heads up. How exactly, let's say a resident wants to report police corruption, who can they turn to without fear of retaliation?
If they're willing to come, with my office is always open. You know, I'm available 24/7. But rather, the best access is our Crime Stoppers.
Mm.
Our Crime Stoppers has existed for many decades, and the Crime Stoppers office is under me, and we have the full confidence in you know, they do not have to identify themselves, and we'll take the lead on those tips. So 234-7272, the same thing, right? Para.
Thank you. That has been somewhat dormant for quite some number of years. I don't know if your board is still active on that, but I think it's a important part of your work to complement some of the services provided by your department.
Yes, ma'am. And I actually met with the board last week.
Okay.
We actually had a sit down and kind of, pledging again my commitment to the board, because as you know, these are a group of volunteers, and it's an enabler for the department. And there's value added for them to be a part of the department, right? Granted that we are protecting anonymity, right, for callers, but more importantly is how the relationship that we're going to foster and nurture going forward. So we have one dedicated officer just for that, and he's been around, and he's quite familiar with the board. As a matter of fact, I listened to the board and I asked whether they have any other nominee in mind, and they have shared that with me, and we have the officer on board.
Thank you for mentioning that. Over the past few years, there have been drug issues with uniformed officers. And these are not first-time offenders. Some of them are in fact repeat offenders, and they're still on the police force. And I'm glad you mentioned the zero tolerance policy, but what are your plans to address this now, here, today?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that, Madam Chair, because we have been looking into that. We're working in close coordination with the Office of Personnel Management. As you know, the drug and alcohol is under them. And so, barring any other specific details, we are actually actively looking into it.
Thank you, and I encourage, those in your department, and I hope you do the same, encourage them that before it becomes a problem, they should seek help. Um, this is one of my last questions. DPS currently has a summons and a warrants section, yet that work is being performed by the judiciary at this time. What steps will you take to have your division that's already in there to serve these summons and these warrants, because it's bogging up at the judiciary, their personnel, because they have to perform their security around the courts and everything. And at the same time, they still need to perform this because it's important for their cases. So I'd like to hear your plans about having your warrants and service at DPS back to operation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The summons and warrants unit actually exists, and that is their primary duty as we help and really support as you mentioned, the judge docket, so that we can make sure that things are moving along as part of the system. So you have my full cooperation as I continue to look into how we can improve this process. I've yet to meet with I've met with the several justices and the PJ, and so that we can collaborate and make sure that we understand and improve the relationship between the courts and us, specifically when it comes to summons and warrants.
That's all I have for now. I will yield to the other members if they have any more. Recognize Senator Dennis Mendiola.
Just follow-up question, Colonel. College credits. I know that you're an advocate with further education or pursuing education. Do you have any plans on allowing or promoting for, higher education within the department? I see here that after academy, these guys accumulate 40 hours of college credit, which is something that you worked on. So given that push that you made, is there any further push that you'd like to do to allow your police officers to acquire higher education?
Thank you, Senator Benyola. That is that's a component that's very important for any career, and I fully support that the officers that that voluntarily come online and want to continue their education. And I agree with you. Yeah, 40 college credits from an academy is my goodness, about a year or sometimes less before they complete their associate's degree. So I fully support that. And as I review the force, I got to see where we can and how we can accommodate those that actually want to pursue. As we speak, we have several officers that are pursuing their education, and I believe one maybe or two may be graduating this May. And so we got to continue that, right? Because we're helping their careers, and their life really after after wearing the blue, so that they can seek other opportunities as well.
Outstanding. Great example is yourself, Colonel. Yeah, you seek further education, and you pursued a different career path which benefited you, where you rendered service to our nation. Now you're back with that credential to render service to our community. I think it's commendable and noble in itself. So speaking on 40 credit hours as a retention, or I guess retention program, I think that's probably one of the means to maintain our police officers and try and make sure that they stay within the department, I guess. Are you looking at graduating and just leaving the department, maybe kind of having some kind of an agreement where you graduate and stay and render your services to the community and not just run away and seek higher paying? Speaking of pay, I'm just interested in specialty pay within the department, and understand today's or now is probably the worst time in talking about additional pay, but I just want to hear your thoughts on any specialty pay or assignment pay. You know, like for example, you get assigned to a specialty team. What are your thoughts on that?
And I applaud you for raising that because that is something. Those premium pays got to be assigned accordingly. And yes, we're expecting our officers to perform a rather hazardous duty than beyond right their duties. For instance, being part of a SWAT team member, or even right dealing with other hazardous material around. Uh, Also, like a standby pay. Okay, we have typically have detectives and investigators that are right on standby, but we're not giving them the premium pay that they rightfully deserve.
Thank you for that. The 28 police officers, just curious on SOPs. Just interested to know. It sounds like excessive overtime is the majority of the investigation, and without impeding your investigation in and of itself, I'm just curious. Does police officer just report to work and just decide to work, or is there a schedule that's rendered, or what's the SOP on that? If you know at this point.
And that's specifically on the 28 you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So they're on administrative duty. So that means they can help anything short of performing police functions. So that we all in the same understanding, right? We do not want to compromise or jeopardize any investigation because or police work, right? Because the moment they answer a phone and talk to the person filing a complaint, right? The investigation has started. Now they're part of that, right? So we do not want to jeopardize and compromise any future investigation into, for instance, crime, right? All the way to prosecution. So that is the purpose of putting them on administrative duty. So that there's a lot of things to do around the department, Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 4:30, and there's a motor vehicle is one of those understaffed area, right? So they can perform functions within motor vehicle. So we're seeking other ways. Granted, this is not right. This is not punishment. This is just right part of our procedure to ensure that we continue with the investigation and reach a resolution on the investigation. So it's not just merely clocking in, right, and just standing by watching the flag. No, it's not that. It's more meaningful because they deserve dignity and respect just like any of the other officers.
Thank you for that. Oh, there's kind of a stigma in the department, no, not just police, but also fire and other line agencies, right? That when you're placed on administrative duty, you messed up pretty much. That's kind of the notion behind that. So the reason why I asked that is that I'm just interested if there was just a complaint and then all of a sudden there's a blanket investigation, or rather scrutiny of is it a valid issue, and I'm sure you inherited it. So I don't want to go too much into detail. I just wanted to point that out. Another question that I have is, what are your thoughts? And I hear this a lot in social media, over the news or wherever, about commissioner being elected. I'm just curious on your thought. I have my opinion on the matter. I'm just curious on your opinion.
So I would liken that to actually doing an analysis, right? Because the most recent elected office that we have in the Commonwealth is the Attorney General. So I would liken on, right, analyzing and reviewing, right, how well is that working for the Commonwealth? Okay. I'm not pointing about the performance of our current Attorney General, by no means. I'm just looking at the office of the Attorney General and being in an elected position, the AG being in an elected position. So I think there's lesson to be learned, and then we'll see how well will it work for an elected commissioner of public safety. Granted that there's minimum qualifications as well, right? Because clearly, in order to be an elected attorney general, you must be an attorney, right? So if you want to be an elected commissioner, you must have been a graduate of an academy, right? And then probably the related educational requirement and experiences. So at this, I do not have an opinion at this point. I'm personally looking at how, right, what difference would it make, and more importantly, how does it improve the performance of the person in that office as they support and provide the necessary services to the public? Because that's what really matters, right? We may have the smartest person in position, but if they can't deliver, yeah. So it's gonna be interesting, and I like to continue the discussion, Senator Mignolo, because it's truly and at this point in the 21st century, we gotta start looking at other ways that we can approach, especially public service. So I'm looking forward to having a discussion over lunch or something about how we off the record on how we see it.
Thank you for that. As long as you're paying for lunch, I agree. But and I just asked because again, it's our duty to kind of just express some of our constituents' concern. So I just wanted to hear your opinion and publicly hear that what you have to say. Of course, we're gonna have our time where we kind of speak about the strategics of that, the challenges, and what may be issues for our community. Last maybe a recommendation, but the last thing that I have really is about our training. Rhoda Rhoda's a little bit, Rhoda and Tinian for that matter, a little bit challenged when it comes to budgetary matter, and Madam Chair kind of stressed this. And if you can, or if you will, when you have additional room for our police officers to go outside and receive further training, it'll be kind of you, given that the crime rate is lower in Rhoda and Tinian, and not that we want the crime rate to be higher. Of course, I kind of love the fact that it's lower, but it gives our police officer less of an interaction with some of their skill sets. And if we get the opportunity to get training for them, that would be outstanding. So the last thing we want is a major incident to occur, and we're calling for deployment just because we're kind of in a jam. So more of a recommendation, Acting Commissioner. Colonel, thank you. Madam Chair, I yield for now.
Recognize Senator Donald Minglone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep this brief. I just have one recommendation and one request. The recommendation I have is just to look into trying to go more digital. I know that in other jurisdictions, we can just mail in a request for license renewal, and then they'll just send you one in the mail. And so kind of just looking at that avenue, so that whether it be to reduce the lines at BMV, or to allow people to just start doing things electronically, which is much more easier on them, and as well as it'll be much easier for your staff. And also, if you can kind of put together a team, maybe to look at a lot of the statutes. I've been hearing a lot from officers that a lot of statutes are real old, very archaic. There are stuff that needs to be amended to meet with the times, as well as to change a lot of the way things are being done. And so, let's work smarter, not harder. And as you mentioned the word start, I wish you the best as you move on to get this agency started. And so with that, Madam Chair, I just want to register for the record that we move expeditiously in the recommendation to the full body for the confirmation of Acting Commissioner Bermudez.
Thank you, Senator Minglone. Anything else? One last question. What rank will you wear on your uniform if you are confirmed? Just curious.
Madam Chair, because I am become the senior uniform officer, so as it currently stands, it's 4 stars. You will only see me wearing the uniform in an official police function.
Okay, thank you. Just curious. Um, we will conclude with your nomination at this time, but I do want to say that your experience, and I understand you are a medical branch, is that correct?
Right, medical services, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Your experience also as an adjunct professor, I think adds value to the mission you have before you as acting commissioner of DPS. And I want to say to you that, and you mentioned this earlier, the badge you may wear as a uniformed officer is a sign and a symbol of public trust and authority. And I hope you keep that always in mind. You've heard from many of your own officers who, and others from the line agencies who support your nomination based on your credentials and your education. And it is this committee's privilege to let you know that you possess the necessary character, education, qualification, and experience to recommend, to confirm your nomination to the full Senate body. And so I want to congratulate you in advance. That's all we have for this morning. Would you like to make any closing remarks before we break for recess?
Yes, ma'am. It will be rather quick. So let's start. Service, trust, accountability, respect, and transparency. As Senator Manglonia mentioned, he kind of probably read my closing. I'm soliciting your help with proposals that to update, strengthen, and streamline both criminal and traffic laws that really enhances our people's safety and security. You'll be receiving these proposals in the coming days. As you mentioned, some laws are just in the books since, what they say, since ever since, and may be meaningless. Some will require more teeth, and some will, and that's up to the legislature. And I solicit your support when it comes to that time. Above all, thank you, and it's great to be home.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the members? It is now 11:21. This meeting is hereby in recess.